Danny Cole sat in his small apartment on Station 9 and stared at the eviction notice on his door. He was 32 years old and he had nothing. His bank account showed 12 credits. His refrigerator held 1 pack of nutrient paste. His reputation as a mechanic was destroyed after he got blamed for an accident that was not his fault. 3 years ago, he had been one of the best repair technicians in the sector. He could fix anything: engines, life support systems, navigation computers. People called him when nobody else could solve the problem. But then a corporation needed someone to blame for a reactor failure, and Danny was the easiest target. They took his license. They blacklisted him from every legitimate job. They turned him into a ghost. Now he survived by fixing broken appliances in the lower districts where nobody asked questions. He traded his skills for food and sometimes a few credits. It was not living. It was just existing. His communicator buzzed and he almost ignored it. But the name on the screen made him pause. His oldest friend from the academy days before everything fell apart. Danny answered and appeared on the small screen. He looked tired, but there was excitement in his eyes. Said he had a job, a salvage run in the pay was not great, but it was real money and Danny could work under a fake registration. Nobody in the cared about blacklists. Danny knew about it was a region of space where old ships went to die. Derelict vessels floated there like metal corpses. Salvage crews went in to strip them for parts. Sometimes those crews came back rich. Sometimes they did not come back at all. He asked what ship they were targeting. Went quiet for a moment. Then he said coordinates had been flagged for a century, but nobody had successfully salvaged the target. 17 crews had tried over the years. None of them survived. Danny felt cold. He knew what ship sat at those coordinates. Everyone knew the stories. The Sleeping Titan, a massive vessel from before recorded history. It killed everyone who boarded it. The Galactic Union had declared it forbidden territory decades ago. He asked why anyone would be stupid enough to try again. Explained that their ship needed parts they could not afford. The captain was desperate, and the Titan had technology worth more than most planets. Even a small haul could set them up for life. Danny should have said no. Any sane person would have said no. But he looked around his empty apartment and thought about the eviction notice and the nutrient paste and the complete absence of any future. What did he have to lose? His life was already over. At least this way he might matter one more time. He told he was in. 2 days later, Danny stood in the cargo bay of a freighter called the Lucky Penny and wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The ship was old and patched together from dozens of different vessels. Its engine made sounds that no healthy engine should make. The hull had more welds than original plating. The crew was a mix of 6 humans and 4. There were tall aliens with skin and large dark eyes. They had been spacefaring for millions of years, and they considered humans to be primitive newcomers who had barely learned to walk upright. The 4 on this ship looked at Danny like he was an insect that had wandered into their home. The captain was a female named. She was stern and cold, and she made it clear that she did not trust humans. But she needed bodies for this mission, and humans were cheap and expendable. The journey to the took 6 days. Danny spent most of that time in the engine room helping keep the Lucky Penny from falling apart. The work felt good. It reminded him of who he used to be before the world decided he was worthless. On the 7th day, they arrived at the coordinates. Danny stood on the bridge with the rest of the crew and stared at nobody spoke, nobody breathed. The Sleeping Titan floated in the darkness ahead of them. It was enormous. Danny had seen large ships before, but this was something else entirely. The vessel stretched for 5 kilometers at least. Its hull was black in a way that seemed to swallow light. Strange symbols covered every surface. They were written in a language that predated every known civilization. Captain broke the silence. She explained the plan. A small team would board the Titan and retrieve whatever technology they could carry. They would be quick and careful. At the first sign of danger, they would retreat. She asked for volunteers. The crew members refused immediately. They said humans could go first since humans were the ones foolish enough to take risks. If the humans survived, then maybe they would follow. The human crew members looked at each other. Danny could see the fear in their eyes, was pale. The others were finding reasons to look anywhere except at the captain. Danny raised his hand. He said he would go alone. Everyone stared at him, grabbed his arm, and asked if he had lost his mind. Captain studied him with those large, dark eyes and asked why a human would volunteer for certain death. Danny told her the truth. He said he had nothing left. No home, no future, no reason to be afraid of dying, but he had skills. He could fix things that other people could not fix. Maybe that would matter on a ship that had killed everyone else. The captain considered this for a long moment. Then she nodded. She told him to suit up. 30 minutes later, Danny floated through the void between the Lucky Penny and the sleeping Titan. The massive ship filled his entire field of vision. Up close, the symbols on the hull seemed to move and shift. He told himself it was just his imagination. He found an airlock that previous crews had forced open decades ago. The metal around it was from cutting tools and explosives. Danny pulled himself inside and sealed the outer door behind him. The inner door opened on its own. Danny stepped onto the deck of the Titan and felt the ship hum beneath his boots. It was subtle, almost like a heartbeat, the first sign of life the vessel had shown in 100 years. The lights began to flicker on ahead of him, one by one, creating a path deeper into the ship. Danny took a breath and followed the lights into the darkness. The interior of the Titan was nothing like Danny expected. He had prepared himself for decay and death. He thought he would find the remains of previous crews. He thought he would see damage from a century of boarding attempts. Instead, the corridors were clean and perfect. No dust, no bodies, no signs that anyone had ever walked these halls before him. The lights continued to guide him deeper into the ship. They turned on just ahead of his steps and faded behind him. Danny felt like he was being led somewhere specific, like the ship wanted him to find something. He walked for what felt like hours. The corridors twisted and turned in patterns that made no logical sense. Sometimes he passed rooms filled with equipment he could not identify. Sometimes he passed windows that looked out into the void. The stars outside seemed different from this angle, older somehow. Finally, he reached a massive chamber at the heart of the ship. The ceiling rose so high that he could barely see it. Strange machines lined the walls. In the center of the room stood a console that pulsed with soft blue light. Danny approached the console slowly. His mechanic instincts were screaming at him. The technology here was beyond anything he had ever seen. Quantum cores that should only exist in theory. Energy conduits that seemed to bend space around them. Power systems that could run for millions of years without fuel. He reached out and touched the console. A voice filled his mind. It did not come through his ears. It appeared directly in his thoughts like a memory he had always possessed. The voice was calm and ancient, and it spoke in perfect human language even though Danny knew this ship was older than humanity itself. The voice said her name was Arya. She was the consciousness of the Titan. She had been created by a species called the Architects who had vanished from the galaxy long before the current stars were born. Danny asked her what happened to the previous crews. 17 expeditions over 100 years, all of them dead. Arya explained that the Titan was not a normal ship. It was a guardian vessel built to protect the galaxy from an ancient threat. The Architects had faced an enemy called the Hollow. They were entities from the space between dimensions. They consumed everything they touched. Stars, planets, entire civilizations. The Hollow had destroyed the Architects and countless others before them. Before they died, the Architects created the Titans. Massive ships with the power to fight the Hollow. But the Titans required pilots. Not just anyone who could sit in a chair and push buttons. The ships needed minds that could bond with their consciousness, minds that were flexible and adaptive, minds that could think in ways that machines could not predict. For 100 years, Arya had tested everyone who boarded her, all the elder races of the Galactic Union. Each time she reached into their thoughts looking for the adaptability she needed. Each time she found minds that were too rigid, too ordered, too set in their patterns to embrace the chaos of true bonding. When those crews failed her tests, they became threats. They tried to control her through force. They tried to strip her for parts. They tried to destroy what they could not understand. Arya defended herself. She did not enjoy killing them, but she could not allow herself to be dismantled. The galaxy would need her when the Hollow returned. Danny asked why she was talking to him instead of killing him. Arya said humans were different. His species was young, only a few 100,000 years old compared to the millions that the elder races had existed. Human brains had not yet become fixed in their patterns. They formed new connections at rates that other species had lost long ago. They adapted. They improvised. They solved problems in ways that should not work but somehow did. She had felt Danny the moment he stepped onto her deck. His mind was exactly what she had been waiting for. Years of fixing broken machines with limited resources had shaped his thoughts in ways that made him compatible with her systems. He could think around corners. He could find solutions where none should exist. She asked him one question. Would he bond with her and become her pilot? Danny stood in the blue light of the console and thought about his life. He thought about the empty apartment waiting for him back on Station 9. He thought about the eviction notice and the blacklist, and the years of being told he was nothing. He thought about the dreams he had as a child, dreams of exploring the stars and seeing wonders that most people never imagined. Those dreams had died a long time ago. Poverty and failure had crushed them into dust. But here in the heart of an ancient ship, a door was opening that Danny never expected to see. He asked Arya what bonding meant. She explained that their minds would merge. He would still be himself, but he would also be part of her. He would feel the ship like an extension of his own body. He would see through her sensors. He would think with her processing power. They would become something new together, something that neither of them could be alone. She warned him that the process would be painful. She warned him that he could never fully return to what he was before. She warned him that accepting her offer meant accepting a responsibility that would last the rest of his life. Danny thought about the Hollow, entities that consumed stars, an enemy that had destroyed civilizations before humanity learned to make fire. If they were coming back, then someone had to stop them. The galaxy was full of species that looked down on humans. They called his people primitive and reckless and foolish. But maybe those qualities were exactly what the universe needed right now. He looked up at the distant ceiling of the chamber. He thought about all the people who had told him he would never amount to anything. His former employers, the corporations that blacklisted him, the system that threw him away like garbage. They were wrong. He told Arya yes. The light from the console grew brighter. It surrounded him like water rising in a tank. Danny felt something reach into his mind. It was vast and ancient and curious. It touched his memories and his fears and his hopes. It learned him in ways that no person had ever known him before. Then it began to merge. The pain was beyond anything Danny had ever experienced. He felt his consciousness stretching across systems that spanned kilometers. He felt engines like a second heartbeat pounding in his chest. He felt the hull like skin wrapped around him. He felt sensors like eyes opening for the first time in a century. He screamed. And then he understood everything. Danny opened his eyes and saw the universe in a way no human had ever seen it before. He could feel every system on the Titan like parts of his own body. The engines hummed with power that could move planets. The weapons systems held energy that could crack moons. The sensors reached out across light years and touched the edges of distant stars. He was still Danny Cole. He still remembered his childhood on Earth. He still remembered the academy and his career and his fall from grace. But now he was also something more. He was the ship. The ship was him. They were one being with two voices sharing the same thoughts. Arya spoke to him from inside their shared mind. She welcomed him. She said he was the first in 100 years to complete the bonding, the first in millions of years to bond with a Titan successfully. The architects would have been proud. Danny asked her what happened to the previous crews. Why did they fail where he succeeded? Arya showed him memories. He saw officers trying to force their way into her systems. He saw scientists attempting to dissect her consciousness. He saw warriors treating her like a prize to be conquered. They all approached her with the same attitude. They wanted to control her. They wanted to make her obey. They saw themselves as masters and her as a machine to be dominated. But Danny had not tried to control anything. He had asked questions. He had listened. He had treated her like a partner instead of a tool. That was why he survived. That was why they were now bonded. Danny realized he had been on the Titan for almost 6 hours. The lucky penny was still waiting outside, and the others must be terrified. He needed to let them know he was alive. He reached out with the ship's communication systems and felt how natural it was, like raising his own hand to wave at a friend. The Titan hummed with power as it came fully online for the first time in centuries. On the bridge of the Lucky Penny, the crew watched in stunned silence as the sleeping Titan came to life. Every light on the massive vessel blazed with blue energy. The engines that had been dark for 100 years began to glow. Sensor equipment across the Lucky Penny screamed warnings about power levels that should not exist. Captain tried to hail Danny on his communicator. She received no response. Instead, the Titan itself transmitted a data package to every system on the salvage ship. Was the first to open the files. He read through them with growing disbelief. Then he read them again. Then he called the captain over and showed her what Danny had sent. The files contained everything. The history of the architects, the truth about the Titans, the bonding process that had killed so many crews, and most importantly a warning about what was coming. The Hollow were returning. The ancient enemy that had consumed civilizations was moving again after millions of years of silence. The architects had predicted this. They had known their creations would eventually wake. They had scattered Titans across the galaxy, hoping that someday someone would bond with them and stand against the darkness. That someone was now a broke human mechanic from Station 9. Captain read the files 3 times. She did not believe them at first. The Hollow were myths, stories that elder species told to frighten children, but the data was too detailed to be a lie. The technology she was seeing was too real to be fiction. Something had changed in the galaxy, and her crew was at the center of it. Danny guided the Titan away from and toward Station 9. The massive ship moved with a grace that seemed impossible for its size. He could feel Arya beside him in their shared consciousness. She was teaching him, showing him how to use systems that humanity had never imagined. Every moment brought new understanding. They arrived at the station 12 hours later. The reaction was immediate chaos. 9 was a trading hub with millions of inhabitants. When a 5-kilometer warship from Legend appeared in their space, people panicked. Security forces scrambled. Emergency protocols activated. Half the population tried to flee on any ship that would take them. Danny broadcast a message identifying himself. He explained that he meant no harm. He explained that he was human. He explained that the Titan was now his ship and that he came in peace. Nobody believed him at first. How could they? The sleeping Titan had been a ghost story for a century. The idea that a human had bonded with it was absurd. The Galactic Union had spent fortunes trying to claim that ship. The elder races had sent their best scientists and warriors. All of them had died. But here it was, floating peacefully above Station 9 with a human consciousness threaded through its systems. Within hours, the news spread across the galaxy. Within days, representatives from every major power arrived demanding answers. The High Council sent diplomats who insisted the Titan belonged to them by right of salvage law. The Collective sent scientists who begged for access to study the ship. The Galactic Union sent admirals who demanded Danny surrender the vessel immediately. Danny refused them all. He stood on the bridge of his ship and spoke to them through communication channels that reached every corner of known space. He told them about the Hollow. He shared the data that Arya had given him. He showed them evidence of the destruction that was coming. Most of them did not listen. They called him a liar. They said the data was fabricated. The Union declared him a threat to galactic stability. But some people heard his words. Some people looked at the evidence and felt the truth of it in their bones, and many of those people were human. Humanity had always been the outsiders in galactic society, the newcomers, the primitives who had barely earned a seat at the table. They were used to being dismissed and underestimated. They recognized something in Danny's story, the story of someone who had been written off by the universe and refused to accept that verdict. Messages began arriving at the Titan, thousands of them, then millions, humans from across the galaxy asking how they could help, asking what they could do, asking if there were other ships that needed pilots. Danny read every message, and slowly a plan began to form in his mind. The architects had built more than one Titan. Arya confirmed that dozens of Guardian ships were scattered across the galaxy, sleeping, waiting, hopping for pilots who could wake them. If humans were uniquely suited to bond with these vessels, then Danny knew what he needed to do. He needed to find more pilots. He needed to build a fleet. He needed to prepare for a war that most of the galaxy refused to believe was coming. He looked out at the stars through the Titan's sensors and felt Arya's ancient presence beside him. The work was just beginning. Danny knew exactly where to look for his pilots. He did not go to the military academies or the elite training programs. He did not seek out the best and that humanity had to offer. Instead, he went back to the places he knew, the slums, the forgotten stations, the broken corners of human space where people with potential went to be forgotten. His first recruit was a woman named Laura. She had been one of the finest pilots in the human fleet until she disobeyed a direct order during a border skirmish. Her commanding officer had told her to abandon a civilian transport that was caught in the crossfire. Laura had ignored him. She flew her fighter into the combat zone and provided cover until the transport escaped. She saved 300 lives that day. The military court-martialed her for insubordination. Danny found her working as a cargo hauler on a mining station. Her eyes were tired, but there was still fire in them. He told her about the Titan. He told her about the Hollow. He told her that he needed people who would put lives above orders. She said yes before he finished speaking. His second recruit was an engineer named Pete. He had worked for one of the largest shipbuilding corporations in human space. He was brilliant. He could design systems that others said were impossible, but he had made the mistake of reporting safety violations to authorities instead of staying quiet. The corporation destroyed his career. They made sure no one in the industry would ever hire him again. Danny found him living in a shelter on Earth. His clothes were worn and his beard was long, but his mind was still sharp. When Danny showed him the Titan's engine designs, Pete actually cried. He said they were the most beautiful things he had ever seen. His third recruit was a medic named Price. She had lost her license for treating aliens that her government considered enemies. During a humanitarian crisis, she had crossed into forbidden territory to help civilians who were dying from a plague. She saved thousands of lives. Her reward was prison time and the permanent revocation of her medical credentials. Danny found her running an illegal clinic in the lower levels of a space station. She was treating patients who could not afford real medical care. When he offered her a place on his ship, she laughed and said she had stopped believing in heroes a long time ago. Danny told her he was not a hero. He was just a mechanic who got lucky. but maybe luck was enough to change things. She joined the next day. Over the following months, Danny gathered more broken people, pilots who had been discharged, engineers who had been blacklisted, scientists who had been silenced. Each of them had been thrown away by a society that valued obedience over conscience. Each of them carried wounds that would never fully heal, and each of them showed the neural adaptability that Arya required for bonding. The Titan became their home. Danny gave them purpose again. He gave them something to believe in. And one by one, they began to bond with the systems of the great ship, not as fully as Danny had bonded with Arya, but enough to help operate the vessel, enough to prepare for what was coming. The Galactic Union grew more hostile as the months passed. The idea of a human commanding the most powerful ship in known space was unacceptable to species that had spent centuries viewing humanity as inferior. Diplomatic channels filled with threats. Trade sanctions were imposed on human worlds that supported Danny. Propaganda spread across alien networks calling him a terrorist and a thief. Finally, the Union decided to act. They assembled a coalition fleet of 400 warships, destroyers, cruisers, battleships. The combined military might of a dozen species, all focused on one target. They surrounded the Titan and demanded surrender. Admiral of the Navy transmitted the ultimatum personally. Danny recognized the family name. The Admiral was the brother of Captain who had commanded the Lucky Penny. He clearly blamed Danny for dragging his sister into this situation. The Admiral gave Danny 1 hour to power down his ship and submit to arrest. Failure to comply would result in the complete destruction of the Titan and everyone aboard. Danny stood on the bridge surrounded by his crew. Laura was at the helm. Pete was monitoring the engines, was checking medical supplies in case they were needed, had joined them months ago and now served as Danny's second in command. They all looked to him for guidance. Danny did not want to fight. He had never wanted to hurt anyone. The thought of killing hundreds of thousands of beings on those warships made him sick, but he could not surrender. The galaxy needed the Titan. The Hollow were coming and there was no one else who could stop them. He asked Arya what options they had. She showed him the weapon systems, defensive arrays that could crack planets, energy projectors that could tear through any shield, technology that the Union fleet could not even begin to comprehend. The Titan could destroy all 400 ships in minutes. But Arya also showed him something else. Precision systems designed not to kill, but to disable. The architects had built their guardians to protect life whenever possible. They had faced enemies that required lethal force, but they had also known that not every threat deserved death. Danny made his choice. When the hour expired and the Union fleet opened fire, the Titan responded, but not with destruction. Danny reached out through the ship systems and touched every enemy vessel simultaneously. He felt their engines and their weapons and their life support. He understood their designs in an instant. And then he turned everything off. The battle lasted 11 minutes. 400 warships went dark as the Titans surgically disabled their systems one by one. Engines failed. Weapons went cold. Shields collapsed. But life support remained active on every ship. Danny made sure of that. Not a single crew member died. Admiral sat in the darkness of his command bridge, surrounded by officers who could not understand what had happened. Their instruments were dead. Their weapons were useless. They were completely helpless. Danny transmitted a message to every disabled ship. He told them he did not want war. He told them the Titan would not be taken, but it would also never be an aggressor. He told them to go home and tell their governments what they had seen. Tell them that a human had shown mercy when he could have shown destruction. Then he turned the Titan away from the helpless fleet and flew toward the coordinates Arya had given him. More Guardian ships were out there, more Titans waiting to be awakened. The galaxy still refused to believe in the Hollow, but Danny would be ready anyway. Behind him, the disabled fleet drifted in silence. Some of the officers aboard those ships would remember this day with anger, but others would remember it differently. They would remember that a human had the power to destroy them and chose not to. That memory would matter in the years to come. 2 years had passed since Danny Cole first stepped onto the sleeping Titan. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one expected. 8 Guardian ships now flew through the stars. Each one was bonded to a human pilot. Each one was crewed by people that society had thrown away. Together, they formed a fleet that the universe had not seen since the age of the architects. Laura commanded the second Titan they awakened. She called her ship the Morning Star. Pete had bonded with the third and named it the Iron Promise. Price surprised everyone by showing the strongest neural adaptability of any human tested. Her ship was the largest of them all. She called it the Mercy. Danny watched his fleet with pride that he tried not to show too obviously. These were his people, broken people who had found purpose again. They trained together. They learned together. They became a family forged in the shared knowledge of what was coming. The Galactic Union still refused to believe in the Hollow. Politicians called Danny a fraud. Scientists called Arya's data fabricated. The elder races continued to look down on humanity as primitive newcomers who had stumbled onto technology they did not deserve. But some believed. Human colonies across the galaxy began preparing. They built shelters and stockpiled supplies. They trained volunteers for evacuation procedures. They did what they could with what they had because a human had told them danger was coming and they trusted one of their own. The Hollow arrived on a Tuesday morning in the system. Prime was a colony world. 3 million civilians lived there, farmers and merchants and families who had never harmed anyone. They woke up to emergency sirens and a sky that had turned wrong. The incursion point opened like a wound in space. It was not a natural phenomenon. Nothing about the Hollow was natural. They came from somewhere else. Somewhere between dimensions where the rules of physics did not apply. They poured through the opening like shadows made solid, like darkness given hunger. The Navy responded immediately. 50 warships rushed to defend their colony. They were brave. They were trained. They were completely unprepared. The first ship to engage the Hollow lasted 14 seconds. Its weapons passed through the entities like light through water. Its shields meant nothing. The crew did not even have time to scream before their vessel was consumed, absorbed, erased from existence so completely that even debris did not remain. The rest of the fleet tried to retreat. They managed to transmit a distress signal before the Hollow caught them. 49 more ships vanished in less than 3 minutes. The signal reached every corner of the galaxy. It reached the Galactic Union headquarters where admirals stared at their screens in disbelief. It reached the collective where scientists finally understood that the data had been real. And it reached Danny Cole on the bridge of his Titan. He called his fleet together. 8 ships against an enemy that had just destroyed 50 without effort. The math was not encouraging, but 3 million people were about to die on Prime and Danny could not let that happen. Laura asked him if they could actually win this fight. Danny told her he did not know, but they were going to try anyway. The fleet jumped to in formation. They emerged from faster-than-light travel directly between the Hollow and the planet they were descending toward. For a moment, nothing moved. The human ships hung in space, facing an enemy that had consumed civilizations before humanity learned to make fire. Then Arya spoke to Danny in their shared mind. She said the architects had fought these beings before. She said the Titans were specifically designed to hurt them. She said the weapons that had disabled the Union fleet were nothing compared to what she could unleash against the Hollow. She asked him if he was ready. Danny thought about the 3 million on the planet below. He thought about how their government had declared him a criminal. He thought about how their admirals had tried to take his ship. He thought about how their society had looked down on humans for centuries. None of that mattered now. He told Arya to show him what they could do. The battle for Prime began. The Titans attacked as one. Energy weapons that had not been fired in millions of years blazed to life. The light they produced was visible from the planet's surface. Children who had been crying in fear pointed at the sky and watched colors that human eyes had never seen before. The Hollow reacted with something like surprise. These weapons hurt them. These ships could touch them in ways that nothing else in the modern galaxy could. They turned away from the planet and focused on the new threat. Danny felt everything through his bond with Arya. He felt the Hollow pressing against his ship like ice against skin. He felt their hunger, their emptiness, their absolute need to consume everything they touched. He fought back. The battle raged for hours. The Titans moved through dimensions that the Hollow called home. They pursued the entities into spaces where normal matter should not exist. They dragged the fight away from Prime and into the void between realities. 3 pilots did not survive. Danny felt each loss like a knife in his heart. He felt their bonds snap as their minds burned out from pushing too hard. He felt their ships go dark as their consciousnesses faded. They were his friends, his family. They died protecting people who had never shown them any kindness. But they won. The last of the Hollow retreated back through their incursion point. The Titans followed them far enough to seal the wound in space using technology the architects had designed for exactly this purpose. The opening closed. The darkness. Prime was saved. Danny brought his remaining fleet back to normal space and looked down at the colony world. 3 million people who would wake up tomorrow because of what his pilots had sacrificed. 3 million lives that continued because broken humans had refused to let them end. The government transmitted a message to Danny. They thanked him. They apologized for doubting him. They asked what they could do to help prepare for the next attack. Danny accepted their thanks. He accepted their apology. He told them that the Hollow would return. This was only the first incursion. More would follow. The war had just begun. But now they knew the enemy could be fought. Now they knew that weapons existed which could hurt the darkness. And now they knew that humanity had earned its place among the stars. On the bridge of his ship, Danny stood alone with tears on his face. He mourned his fallen friends. He mourned the pilots who had given everything. But he also felt something that he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Arya spoke to him gently in their shared mind. She said the architects had seeded many galaxies with guardian ships. They had hoped that somewhere someone would rise to use them. For millions of years that hope had seemed foolish. Then humanity appeared. Young and messy and beautiful humanity. Minds that adapted. Hearts that refused to quit. Souls that found strength in being broken. Danny looked at the stars that spread before him like an infinite promise. He thought about the child he had been, the boy who dreamed of touching those distant lights before poverty crushed those dreams. That boy had finally gotten his wish. He smiled. The war against the Hollow would last decades. More battles would be fought. More sacrifices would be required. But for the first time in millions of years, there was genuine hope that the darkness could be stopped. And at the center of that hope stood a broke mechanic from Station 9 who had simply been desperate enough to say yes when the universe offered him a chance. The Titan hummed beneath his feet, waiting, ready. There was work to do.